All guests reporting. Admin Will standing by.
Admin Mark standing by.
Not Admin Mark standing by.
Right then, so we're coming into episode 7 of Standing By, I believe, and today we are going to go back in time. That's too far back in time, but we're going back in time to X-wing 1.0, and we're going to try not to rant about it. Do we all agree that we're not going to try our best not to rant about it?
Would be best.
I don't know if I can commit to that.
Neither can I.
Can I just say before we go ahead,
kill it if you have to.
I am a fully trained mental health first aider. So should anybody have any PTSD style flashbacks during this production, feel free to ring me.
Yes, we'll do a helpline number at the end for anyone who has.
I'm going to go through some very distressing scenes.
Yes. Harpoon missiles.
Your discretion is advised.
So, before we start, off the top of you guys' head, what's like a good thing about 1.0 that you remember?
Can I go first?
Yeah.
I got given the core set for Christmas by someone, and I'd never played any miniatures games or anything like that before. And I got the game, loved it. We just played it on the kitchen table with my son and I. Got all the rules wrong, still loved it. Then I went on the internet and found out about the expansions and competitions and whatever, and it opened up a whole new world of stuff for me, and I loved it.
And Mark found people for the first time.
Yeah. Apparently, there's like people in like stores that play games and stuff. It's just like, wow.
I used to work.
Yes, I loved it, but they did kill it towards the end with stuff.
Yes, we'll get to all that kind of stuff. For me, I was introduced to it where I used to work, which is just up the road from IQ Games in Huddersfield, which was at Laser Zone. They started stocking it, and the manager decided to demo it at his house. And we also got the rules very wrong. The main thing, specifically, what I remember, is setting up the asteroids, and we basically clustered them all at range 0 in the center, and then just flew in circles. Basically, because we didn't read the rules properly.
Because you got the roundabout expansion.
But X-wing 1.0 was great fun for a time. It just got a bit tired with fixes and extra cards and silly combos that were there, and cards being a mess, which we'll get into in a minute. But from the beginning to middle point for me, I was loving it, and I remember picking up Han Solo and 2 Blue Squadron B-Wings. That was the first list, and I started coming first place at Laser Zone. Then I started playing Twin IGs with a plethora of stuff. That's a card I haven't put in, Mangler Cannon. Just remembered a card off the top of my head. And I really enjoyed it.
I'll fight you. That card was fine.
What about you, Admin Mark?
Well, I got into X-wing quite early on. I think it was wave 3. I was actually at IQ playing Fantasy, Warhammer Fantasy, and some people were making very loud noises. One of them had bright ginger hair and a great big bushy ginger beard. I can't think who that might be.
No, he definitely wasn't called John.
No, it wasn't John. No. And I got roped into a demo game of John telling me how to fly ships. Sorry, I mean, giving me advice on how to fly. Still does that now.
Yeah, generally gets ignored now, though. So, to start us off, the first thing what we'll say is the points of everything in 1.0 and the slots of what you could put on each pilot was printed physically on the cards. So you can see, for example, here you've got Luke Skywalker coming in at 28 points, and you can see there that you can add an EPT, a torpedo, and a droid. I've got example 4 there. R2D2 4, Push the Limit 3. We'll talk about Push the Limit in a second. Proton Torpedoes 4 points. And you had up to 100 points in a standard game to build your list. So the problem was later in the game, in X-wing 1.0's life, is that none of the points could be physically changed without a hell of a lot of effort. Points would never be changed. They brought in, that's another thing I didn't add, negative point cost titles. Integrated astromech, for example, which halved the cost of the droids that you'd put on your X-wing. And other stuff that we'll get onto in a bit as well had slots physically removed, but your physical printed card that you already owned still obviously showed what slots they were. So speaking of 2.0, we've got Luke Skywalker here. Can't see any of the points. You can't see what you can slot onto him, but there's a few cards there for him. Force powers are also a thing. Force was not a thing in 1.0. So what we have...
One of the key things, the change was they changed the standard points from 100 points to 200.
Yes.
And that's because they could then adjust, because you could never have 1.5 points in 1.0, and sometimes that was needed because 2 points was too strong, 1 point wasn't enough. So changing everything to 200 points, that was a real mind masher when it first started. But, it just gave you that ability to alter the points so it's exactly where it needs to be, rather than having to get to decimals.
Also gave
as
some...
well.
Go on, sorry.
It sounds like a really small thing and really like not that important, but when 2.0 came out and they went, you must have at least 2 ships and a maximum of 8, I think that was quite a good change as well. Not looking at the Ghost or anything.
Yes. Some people did just try and fly the Ghost on its own.
Yes.
So we got
point here.
Yeah, we've got an example here of 2.0 app. This is a third-party app, but on the left there's the list that I've made, and then you can click on each one of these individual pilots, and then it shows you their slots, and then you can click on a slot, go to the right-hand image there, EPTs. You've got all the different EPTs that this pilot can take, and then it adds the points up for you, and you save your list, and then you've got yourself a list that you can print off or save on your phone. And then all you have to do is gather the cards as normal.
What I would like to add here as well is that this isn't the official app. This is a third-party app.
Yeah.
There is an official app as well.
There is. There was one. So we could actually talk about problems in 2.0 as well. So the first official app. How many people used it?
I was that person.
And then they very recently actually introduced a second official app, which is a lot better, but it's still a bit...
The only time I use the official app is, because we've not done it for over a year now, is when you went to tournaments, because you could use I can't remember what they're bloody called now, the scan code, and you could just scan your entry in.
The QR code.
That's the one.
Yes. Yep. So it's quite useful for tournament entry. It makes it a bit quicker. So what the wonderful thing is about having points and slots on an app is that every 6 months they'll do a points errata where things that have been an issue might go up in points, things that aren't being played as much might go down in points, and certain ships, like Boba Fett, can have slots removed when certain combos are getting too powerful. So Boba Fett became quite a prevalent force who had a crew slot, and you equipped Maul to him, and then it was just super powerful. So he basically had his crew slot removed. So on the left here, you can see on the app, Boba Fett does not have a crew slot, but it has 2 modification slots, whereas Kath Scarlet on the right has a crew slot, but only 1 modification slot. So it's really easy to change stuff when things become an issue or things aren't played that much. Whereas in 1.0, go on, Mark.
Yeah, I think the first time it was a mega issue was in 1.0. They released a pack called Rebel Aces because they realised that the A-wings at the time, although they were a lovely ship, they had priced them way above what they needed to be. So they brought in a card called the Shardan Refits that had a negative points cost.
Oh God, yes.
And you just put it on the A-wing to knock 2 points off, so it was then remotely viable and playable. And
because they've not just done that in 2.0 as well, just without the minus points cost.
Yeah. So that's when they sort of kind of realised that, okay, the only way we can fix stuff now is with extra cards.
Yes. Yeah.
So they had no other avenue of fixing stuff, and that was kind of the beginning of the power creep decline, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. So the B-wing upgrade as well.
Yeah, B-wing did it as well. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Which added the gunner slot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is one of the best examples from 1.0 that's on screen now. The Jump Master in general. Was it 3 or 4 Jump Masters that were in play in 1.0?
3.
It was 3 Jump Masters.
Oh yeah, because they're 25 each.
4 nerfs that FFG did on it. It took 4 nerfs to kill it.
Yeah.
I can't remember what all the nerfs were, but the main one is on screen here. So the original printed card had torpedo slots and a droid slot, and then something needed to be done. So they went, okay, you're not allowed to equip torpedoes anymore, and you're not allowed to equip a droid anymore. And then later on, packs with the Jump Master in had the new card that's on the right, freshly printed, which is a problem you don't have in 2.0 because they aren't printed on the card. It just gets changed in the app, and then an update just comes on your phone that takes 2 seconds, and then you go, oh, the ship that I've been using has gone down in points. Cool, I'll fit more stuff in. Oh, Bob has lost a crew. Never mind. It's just easier. Can anyone else think of any other?
I'll just say that they have completely ruined the 2.0 Jump Master.
Yes. It very easily turned left, and it had a really good dial in 1.0. Like turning right wasn't difficult enough. Turning left was really easy, and then you could still push the limit to it and stuff like that. And
I know, but if you are a spiritual person and you believe in things like karma, the Jump Master still shouldn't be good until X-wing 4.0.
when it comes back in.
I'll not say that I've got 2 in my X-wing case that I can't fly.
I think I've got 3.
Yeah.
Because I think I got one when I bought someone's 1.0 collection when they didn't want it anymore because they didn't want to move to 2.0.
Change bad.
Yeah. So
he chose poorly.
Bases in 1.0, you got the bases on the left there. You just had your primary arc out front, and all large bases, or at least turreted large bases in 1.0 had a full 360-degree arc. So it didn't matter what your dial was, you just put it to where you wanted to go, and you could still shoot the enemy. Whereas in 2.0, you gain... Some large ships have a single 90-degree arc that you can rotate, and some large ships have a bow tie arc, so it'll be back and front or left and right, that you can only shoot out of, which gives smaller base stuff a chance to actually not be in large ships' arcs.
There was one 1.0 ship, large base ship, that had a turret and did have a mobile arc,
which was the Shadowcaster.
Yes, my favorite ship
because it had gyroscopic targeting.
Yes, that's the one.
So after you moved, you could freely rotate your arc to where you wanted it to be.
No,
if I remember right.
It was at the end of the round. You could rotate your arc.
End of the round, you could rotate your arc if you'd done a certain speed maneuver of 3 to 5.
Yes, if you moved, 3 to
5. Whereas all turreted ships in the games now have mobile arcs, and you have to choose where to point it and then if you've flown right and chosen the correct direction, you'll be able to shoot. But elite pilots can still outmaneuver turret and get out of arc.
Yeah.
Also, you'll note that there's some extra lines on the 2.0 bases there. There's the bullseye arc. So certain cards from 1.0, like Crackshot and Predator, that was the full arc to get the effect. In 2.0, it's now just the bullseye. So you have to actually fly in a position. Flying and positioning is way more important. I think there's a very old video on this YouTube channel of me saying how positioning is becoming important in 2.0 when 2.0 was just releasing. So you can go back and watch that if you don't play 2.0 yet.
But X-wing is a game of positioning.
Yep, it's not a dice game. Yeah, that's a very old.
1.0 was a card game.
So that's the base changes. Dial changes. It's a nicer designed dial, and then green maneuvers became blue maneuvers because people with color blindness couldn't really tell the difference between green and red. So we'll start with the problem childs. These two cards here were.
Come on, Will. We should have at least had an explicit warning first.
Sorry. Well, these aren't even the bad ones. They're very prominent, but they aren't the vomit-inducing things, which are only a few slides away. So, warning now. But you had veteran instincts.
These were the cards that were stapled on.
Yeah.
So basically, for those who had never had to deal with these things, veteran instincts, it came out with the Millennium Falcon pack in Wave 2, I believe, and it was this genius idea that if for 1 point you could increase your pilot skill by 2, and the entire world then cottoned on that moving last was a great thing, and if you could put veteran instincts on the highest pilot skill at the time, which was 9, you could make yourself a pilot skill 10, and that would guarantee that you would move last. Sorry, 11, yes, and you would guarantee that you would move last. And
which then meant you could spend all your points.
Yeah, you could then spend all of your points. But then they realised that everybody was doing that, and everybody was spending all their points. So then people started knocking other upgrades off so they could have a bid, but still have veteran instincts.
Mm-hmm.
The Halcyon day.
One thing to just mention now, also speaking about pilot skills, is you had basically 0 to 11 or 12 if your name is Rourke Garnet and you're going to treat someone on your team as pilot skill 12 so that they definitely shoot first.
I loved Rourke Garnet.
Yeah, I used him quite a lot as well, and Janos.
Just because of all these Soontier players who thought they were the man. Yeah, and I'm moving last, and I'm amazing.
There was nothing wrong with Sunterfeld. You leave him alone.
I am the captain now.
Hey, look at him.
12. Yes.
No. That happened when the god of all ace players in the world, Fen Rao, appeared.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So in 2.0, you've got 0 to 6, and that's basically you've got 0 to 7. Sorry, and 7 you can only get to pilot skill 7 if you are a Force user or your name is Han Solo. I think that's about
crew.
It. Han Solo crew. Yes. So there's no veteran instincts in 2.0. God. If we go back one, the other option, the other option in 1.0 was push the limit, which was basically if you're not too bothered about moving last, you've got the option of having the best action economy ever. So if you've got an EPT slot, you put this on, and then you can choose any action on your action bar, followed by any other action on your action bar in any order you wanted, in exchange for a stress token, which was just amazing because aggressive ships could just fly in and go, I'm going to focus, take a stress, and target lock you.
Especially when your name was Tycho.
Or for very evasive ships, you can boost and barrel or barrel and boost.
Let's just pour one out for our boy Tycho.
You know what?
Have a pile of stress tokens.
Bring back Tycho!
I do want Tycho back. I'd really like to see him back. I'm disappointed he wasn't in the new A-Wing pack. But yeah, so these were the staples of 1.0. You were either trying to fly last with veteran instincts and a bid, or you're probably still tried to have a bid, but you had really good action economy on very maneuverable ships that you could boost and barrel and reposition yourself so you can get out of people's arcs. They were the two staples. We've mentioned
push the limit. That was an interesting one because even now, I look at push the limit and I go, it doesn't seem that bad. You have to take a stress to do it, and basically it is a pretty good card. 3 points back then was a reasonable price, but I think the issue was that the introduction of push the limit then brought in the stress meta, which was, well, actually, if we've got all these aces who are going to take one stress, do a blue hard 2, do another 2 actions, and just be really squirrely and whatever, we need to find a way to make them double stressed, because then that means they can't push the limit. So then you bring in position that are going to try and chuck the stress out. And this is where I think these are the 2 cards that started the counter movement, which is we need to bring out another card to offset this one because this one's really strong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and basically FFG got themselves into a cycle of, here is a card to defeat X. Here is this card that defeats this card that defeated X.
Here's this card that's got negative points cost to try and make you fly these ships that aren't being flown because they're not very good, etc.
Yep.
One thing to mention in 2.0, push the limit is kind of still here in spirit. Because as you can see on Darth Vader's card there, he can do a focus linked into a red barrel roll. That is the only 2 actions that he can do in a row if he's going to take a stress token. The only difference being with Darth Vader here, he's got his force ability that's just silly, and he can spend force to do extra actions anywhere without stress. But if it was Marek Stel, or however you want to pronounce his name, he could have a push the limit in inverted commas and do a focus, take a stress token, and do a barrel roll. But
essentially,
you can't do it in the other order.
It's a limited push the limit.
Yeah,
in that you can only perform those actions.
Yeah. In that order, you can't do a focus into a target lock. You can't do a barrel roll into a boost if the ship has boost. You can't do a focus and an evade in the same turn if you have those in your action bars. Really, in 2.0, any linked action that exists is usually a focus into a reposition, or a target lock into a reposition, or a reposition into like a calculate. If it's Guri, you can do a boost or a barrel roll and then take a stress to do a red calculate action.
Yeah. And one of the other things was that, which is worth noting, was the change to evades. So in 1.0, if you had an evade token, that added an evade result rather than converted a result to an evade,
which was incredibly powerful.
Yeah, it got to the point where Super Soon Tier, if he had also thrusted range 3 through a rock with Palpatine, he could literally roll 4 dice and end up with 5 evades. And you were like, how are you ever supposed to kill him if he can get 5 evades?
Mm-hmm. And you could have more than 1 evade token as well and spend
both. Yeah.
And do you know what the answer was to Super Soon Tier? Bombs, which we'll get to shortly.
Yeah, bombs,
Yeah.
or Mangler Cannon 10 Num. Oh, I love that. Come at me, bro. You land in this taking a crit.
Yeah, for reference, Mangle Cannon was a 1.0 cannon upgrade.
3 dice attack, range 2 to 3.
And it changed automatically, basically had marksmanship, changing something to a crit.
Yeah, you changed a result to a crit.
You could not cancel it.
And you could not cancel the crit.
Oh god, that's right, you couldn't cancel it. That's why I liked my IGs.
So I remember, because Soontir was the bane of my life in 1.0, and I went to a tournament at Vault 14 in Doncaster, and I faced Soontir twice, and I'd taken 10 Num with Veteran Instincts and Mangler Cannon, just so he was a Soontir killer. And both times, Soontir happened to land just in the arc, and both times he got all your hard turns of red as a crit. Because
do you remember who it was that you played that game against?
Was it you?
Yes, it was me.
And the other one was Richard Thomas. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful moment. Yeah, you know this wonderful blue turn for your push the limit scenarios? That's finished, boy. I still lost, but I don't care. Here's wins,
Oh
and
dear.
that's all that mattered.
Right, moving on then. So, warning now, you may vomit. Okay? So in 3, 2, 1. Oh dear. Right, we'll start with the left card. This is a really, really clever idea that FFG decided to print. Because why wouldn't this be an issue that when attacking, if you're not stressed, you can just change or leave your eyes to hits?
Because this expertise came out at the same time as Rey did.
Mhm.
Sorry, Rey Skywalker, as she's
Yes.
now prefers to be called.
Mhm.
And Rey could do this really cool trick of being able to sloop for free without taking a stress token
Mhm.
and shoot you up the backside
Mhm.
with a hand with 4 or 5 dice at range 1, I think it was, because she still added the
Because
blank.
Finn added the blank.
And so she just rolled a big handful of eyeballs and just go, I'm just going to change these all to hits, and your ship's just died because you didn't get auto thrusters.
And her
I'm
her
not bitter.
ability that changed the blank to
Yes,
a hit?
change the blank to change the blank to an eyeball, and then obviously you could expertise the eyeball to a hit.
God.
Yeah.
For 4
In
points as well.
Expertise's defense, in modern day language, that's what 8 points
Mm-hmm.
in 2.0 pointage. And Saw Gerrera Crew, which is a better version of this, is 9 points.
Yes, but with Saw Gerrera, you are taking damage.
Yeah, but I didn't think expertise was that bad. It was that
It
bad on a
was.
couple of builds. But to me, expertise was way down the list of horridness compared to its counterpart on the right side of the screen.
So someone read a tiny mind link. I think I need to look away from the screen while someone reads this.
A tiny mind link, scum only, limit 2 per squad.
That was the retcon, by the way. It didn't
yes,
used to be limited.
that was the first errata.
Yeah. Each time you are assigned a focus or a stress token, each of the friendly ship with a tiny mind link must also be assigned the same type of token if it does not already have one.
Yep. And then they limited it to range 1 to 2. Because they realised it was still broken.
Yeah. I mean, this is when the Scum faction came into its own. There were a couple of builds that were just...
Manaroo.
I was going to say Manaroo, yes.
Manaroo, or Dengaroo, as the double list was called. And then there was various other tiny mind link lists where, even now, I don't fully understand how it happened, but somebody would cough and blink, and before you know it, every ship had 15 focuses and none of them died.
Hi.
Basically, you had Manaroo, who I think it was beginning of combat could pass all of her tokens to a friendly ship within a certain range, or was it anywhere on the field?
No, when she first came out, it was unlimited range.
Wow. Okay.
She also got errated to only being at range 1.
Right. So she could basically pass her pile of tokens. So Dengar can be on the other side of the board in a fight, doing whatever actions he wants to do, and then Manaroo's in the board just spinning in circles, getting focuses and all that kind of jibber jabber. And then she'd go, "Here, Dengar, have all of this stuff." And then because we've both got a tiny mind link, I'm gonna not take my own token back. I'm just gonna have more focus appear because I've just assigned you some focus. So it was.
Look at that! I'm still focused, even though I've passed you my focus token.
It was silly, especially when you could have more than 2 ships with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that was quite a bad
I remember something else that was around about this time as well. Was it Zucker's Crew, or was it Forlom? It was one of those, and it was you could just get your opponent to re-roll their defense dice.
Yep.
Was that right? And the one time I ever rolled evades somebody just go, I'll take a stress to Zuckerston so you can roll them all into blanks. No, you're dead.
Mm-hmm.
That was round about the mind link time.
This is a good one to talk about. So C3PO in 1.0. Once per round before you roll one or more defense dice, you can guess aloud a number of evade results. If you roll that many evade results before modifying dice, add an evade result. So you put it on a 1 agility ship, like Han Solo.
Yes, you put it on the Falcon.
And you go, I'm going to guess 0, and then you roll a blank or an eye, and then add an evade result, and then modify the original dice to get a second evade result. It was very powerful and was part of the Fat Han build. So you had,
or if you were really good at maths, you took it on a 2 evade dice ship,
and then guessed 1.
Yeah, and then guessed 1 most of the time.
Whereas new C3PO isn't used anymore. I couldn't find the full card for some reason, so I do apologise. But he adds the calculate action to the ship that he's on, and you can now spend a calculate token to guess a number of 1 or higher. If you do and you roll exactly that many evade results, you then add an evade result. I have seen him work in 2.0, but he works a lot less just because you can't guess 0.
Yeah.
So,
and I think for me, this was kind of when I called the rules lawyer contingent took over at one point, because this was when people started really focusing in on certain words, and when it says you, does that mean you the person or you the ship? And it was just all this. Well, 0 is a number, so I can guess 0. So therefore, every time I guess 0, I'm at least adding an evade to my roll, because I'll either get an evade or I won't. If I do get an evade, brilliant. If I don't, I add 1 with 3PO. And it just started the whole, what I call the rules lawyer scenario of where, I remember having a stand-up argument with somebody, because when the TIE Aggressor came out, somebody pointed out that they could then add the title from the IG Aggressor, because they both got the word aggressor in. And I was like, no, you can't, because it's anybody with a reasonable brain would go, no, you can't. But I was told, well, rules as written, you can. And I was like, yes, but anybody who's a reasonable human being would know that when it says, aggressor, and it's got a picture of the scum aggressor on it, and it only came out with the scum aggressor pack, why would you be able to add that to a TIE Aggressor? And I think that just showed you where 1.0 got to, really. It was just card combinations and rules lawyering to the point where it just sucked the fun out of the game for a lot of people.
Agreed.
Now but we're gonna that stuff. It made the game for them, so.
Now we're gonna start going up a ladder now of stuff to try and negate other stuff, to then bring out more stuff to negate the stuff that negated the original stuff. So large base ships in 1.0 was like the thing to fly. They were super powerful. Didn't matter what you set in your dial, 360-degree arc, you're going to be able to shoot. Dash Render here is an excellent example. You equipped a heavy laser cannon. Go on, sorry, Mark.
Also, another thing to add, originally in 1.0, you didn't have half.
Yes, that is a point as well. So if you could tank and be alive as a large ship at the end of the game, the opponent wouldn't receive any points whatsoever. Whereas in 2.0, if Dash Rendar here was on 5 health remaining, you would get half of his points.
There was a point where I won a run of games 200-0, whilst both of my ships only had 1 hole left.
Yep.
And there was a lot of running away.
Yes.
Yep. Basically, you took your large ships. As long as they were alive at the end of the game, you didn't care. You'd just 100-0 people. 0.0.
Yep. And then they brought out half points on big ships, and everybody stopped flying big ships.
Mm-hmm. Which is why in 2.0, big ships are actually a lot cheaper in most cases than comparatively what they were in 1.0.
Still not very good.
No. Dash Render in 2.0 is actually more expensive than his 1.0 version, but there's a reason for that. But we're not going to go into that, otherwise I'm going to pay forever. But yeah, large base ships were a massive powerhouse in 1.0 because you could bank all your points into them, and if you're alive at the end of the game, which generally you were, you're going to have a lot of points. And Dash Render here can have double action economy, and then he didn't care about the stress because Kanan Jarrus is on board, just rubbing his stress better. And then you can just choose whatever maneuver you wanted and did a white maneuver and got rid of the stress token. And then you had the Outrider title that allows you to have a 360-degree heavy laser cannon, so that no matter where Dash Render was, he basically could barrel away from you and still take a focus or a target lock to have mods and have heavy laser cannon throwing out 4 dice.
I remember the first time I actually saw somebody do this, because again, we've got to remember that Dash could ignore obstacles. So he would fly onto an obstacle, barrel roll off it, get the stress from the barrel roll, boost, get rid of it from Kanan Jarrus, have his heavy laser cannon, and before you know it, he was on a different side of the board, still shooting you with 4 dice. And you were like, I don't really know what just happened there. And you just couldn't catch him.
Because he could just hard one and then barrel roll behind you, basically. Because barrel rolls have also changed in 2.0 for large base ships as well. In 1.0, just like small base ships, you had the speed 1 template lengthways, and large ship barreled a hell of a long way by using that template lengthways. Whereas in 2.0, you now have to put it vertical next to the ship, and you basically only barrel roll in half the distance that you were before, and then you can't position the ship anywhere. It's got to be front, middle, or back. So that's
what I will say with 1.0 Dash, though, is at range 1 you could not shoot at all.
At all, no. But generally, he was going to be shooting something with 4 dice because he could barrel away and then with push the limit just stress himself and have mods.
Yep.
But in general, across the board, large ships were a powerhouse. So, how did they decide to try and nerf large base ships?
Be prepared.
Auto thrusters! In which you had to buy the Auto Thrusters expansion pack, which was the Star Viper. So you had to pay £16 or however much it was back in the day.
For 2 Auto Thrusters, but you did get a free Star Viper that you didn't want to fly.
Yes, because in 1.0 Star Vipers weren't all that. So when defending, if you're beyond range 2 or outside of the attacker's firing arc, i.e. his primary front-facing arc, you may change one of your blank results to an evade results, and you can only equip this card if you have the boost action. So basically, every ship that had boost equipped this, and then suddenly, versus turreted ships, you could defend against them far easier. It also led to some shenanigans. So some ships had 2 mod slots. So a ship that didn't have a native boost could equip engine upgrade to gain boost, and then because they'd gained boost from engine upgrade, you were allowed to then equip auto thrusters so that they could have free evades against turreted ships or being beyond range 2. So that was daft. Not admin Mark, you mentioned stealth device earlier. Do you want to explain that?
Stealth device. I mean, again, I'm going to rant about Soontir because I'm a rebel player here, but the standard Soontir was that Soontir would have auto thrusters and stealth device. So this meant that at range 3, Soontir was rolling 4 defense dice. Soontir would have an evade normally as one of the actions possible.
5 defense dice with stealth device.
Right, 5 defense dice. Then if it was through a lock, it could be 6. One of those was going to be a result, because inevitably they were being shot at because of the 360-degree turret. So inevitably one of those is going to be an evade anyway. You had Emperor Palpatine, which was you can change anything to anything. So that was 2 dodged already. Well, then all you've got is you've got a an evade token out there somewhere that adds an evade. And then out of the 5 dice that you've rolled, you just need 1 or 2 of them to come up with evades. And before you know it, that's that. It was just like, it was just terrible, because I remember, firing torpedoes at Soontir, and it just laughed them off like they weren't there. And if you're the Soontir player, I'm sure that was the best fun in the world. But for everybody else, you were just like, you just won't die. You could have fired 18 Hiroshima bombs at him, and he'd have just gone, nah.
Just for old time's sakes, sing a little tune. Sunterfell, Sunterfell. That was an old thing we used to do in IQ games all the time. But yeah, stealth device, just like 2.0. If you're hit by an attack, you discard the card. But the fact was, with these silly combos with auto thrusters,
you just weren't ever getting hit.
You weren't getting hit. So for entire games, you'd have this extra stealth device, and Sunterfell would be ending games on full health because he was there just rolling infinite evades.
There was actually somebody who went to a competition with nothing but Soontir.
Mm-hmm.
What, literally just flew Sunterfell on his own?
Yeah.
Just Soontir.
Did he do well?
He did okay.
I think whoever it was, they made the cut of the tournament just flying Sunterfell by himself.
Wow. So yeah, auto thrusters. Yes, it did its job of nerfing large ships, but then no one flew large ships unless it was Dash Rendar, because he was flying the extra attack dice needed to have the chance of actually hitting Sunterfell.
So you had because in essence what happened, the Phantoms came out, and they were proper broken when they came out, and so the entire meta shifted to, let's bring out the pancake meta, which was the Fat Han or Dash Rendar, because they're round and look like pancakes, and it, because they were the antidotes to the only things that could kill the Phantoms. So then people actually based their entire strategy on, well, what can kill the pancakes, and that was auto thruster aces. And so auto thruster aces became virtually unkillable if they were flown well, and there were people out there who could fly them very, very, very well. So then you needed more and more damage to go through to make any kind of difference.
Going back in time, IQ Games had good old Mr. Lee Duncan with his double decimators, and he won IQ Games regional, I believe. I
believe so.
In 2015, and I can remember when he basically started flying these decimators, and then IG-88 got released. The IG Aggressors got released, and you could put auto thrusters on them and push the limit on them. And I can remember putting 2 of those on the table and tearing double decimators apart. And it was like, oh. And I've 100 nilled the double decimator list because they can't hit me because of auto thrusters, and I'm just flying around with double action economy. Didn't stop me from making the mistake in the regionals that Lee won, of giving the wrong initiative to a mirror match of twin IGs and then losing and being 5-1 and not getting into the cup, which upset me greatly. But we're not going to go into that because I had a 6-month break from 1.0 after that, and then I came back, and then a couple of months later 2.0 was released, I believe.
No, it was a bit longer than that.
Probably a bit longer than that.
Because the 2016 regional, I made the top 8 at IQ.
Yes. What did you take to that?
I took Dengar and Asajj.
Oh yeah, because Shadowcasters were actually good back then as well.
Yeah, and I went 5-1 after losing my first game 100-0. Sorry, I then proceeded to win every game.
I was one of those games. You're welcome.
Thanks, Mark.
What do you call that when you lose the first game? Spanish?
Submarining.
No, submarining.
Submarining. Oh, you called it a Spanish gambit or something, didn't you? What do you call it?
No, subtard.
I think that's a euphemism for something else.
Fine, we'll call it submarining. So you had large bases, and then auto thrusters came out, and then large bases were like, oh, I can't do anything anymore because auto thrusters being silly. So they needed to fix auto thrusters. How did they fix auto thrusters? I need to put like an alert on the screen somehow. So you had twin laser turret get released. I believe it did actually come in the K-wing.
4 B-wings. Not B-wings, sorry. Y-wings.
4 Y-wings with TLT that basically were guaranteed to fire and deal 2 damage, which meant total of 8 damage to any ship that it shot at. Why? Because you perform the attack twice, and each time the attack hits, the defender suffers a damage, then cancel all dice results. So stuff like Sunter Fell probably could evade the first shot, but when they shoot the second time, they probably got hit. And then the next Y-wing shot at you that fired twice, and then you probably got hit, and then maybe we're dead because you only have 3 health.
Yeah. It was quite often that you were going to be facing 8 shots a turn.
8
shots.
shots.
Sunter Fell can evade 8 shots? No.
But bearing in mind it was full 360 degrees, so it didn't matter where it was, you were going to be shot by this unless you were at rate 1.
And that was the thing, that it literally was the only way to push through Sunter was just to run the green dice gambit of eventually, if we hit you often enough, you're going to run out of green dice luck and you're going to have spent all your tokens. So TLT was hard.
And all of those Y-wings also had the stress bot on them as well.
Well, there was only one stress bot.
Oh, yeah, one stress bot. But you're still shooting twice.
The stress bot was every time you perform an attack, you can deal somebody a stress. So you would have one of your TLT Y-wings with the stress bot, so you could do potentially 8 shots and chuck out a couple of stress a turn. And that's what wounded the aces, because once they've got the stress, they're not as dodgy as they were, and then they're just going to succumb to the incessant 1 damage of twin laser turret.
Being pinged to death. So where auto thrusters came in and gave everything a chance against large spaceships, twin laser turrets came in and then absolutely decimated any kind of elite pilot in the game. So your Sunter Fells, any large base ship just couldn't do anything against them because they didn't have enough evade dice. So your 4 Y-wings just went, hey, large ship, have 8 damage. Next turn, you're dead.
Especially if you were in a Ghost or a Desi, because you had no defense dice. So just 8 damage.
Well, they could generally die anyway because they've got no defense dice. But even your fat hand builds where they were getting free evades from C-3PO, sorry, I've still hit you, and you're going to take 1 damage. Your whispers and echoes just died to it because even if they were cloaked, as long as 1 dice gets through, you take 1 damage, and you just didn't have enough health. So all the elite pilots were just going pop as soon as they engaged against, especially 4 Y-wings with twin laser turret.
Yeah.
It was awful card that got released. That.
Yeah. And this came out with the K-wings. And if you weren't spamming 4 of them on Y-wings, you had it on Miranda.
Yes, and we'll explain her now.
Miranda. Yeah, Miranda was once per round when attacking, you can spend a shield to roll an additional attack dice or roll 1 fewer attack dice to recover a shield. So it's a much better version than her 2.0 ability, and it was just unlimited regen, especially when you've got a TLT. You can roll an extra on the first one and then recover a shield by rolling 1 less on the second one, because by that point they've probably spent the token anyway, and if something goes through, they still take the damage. So, Miranda was bad news in 1.0.
Yeah, she was really horrible with TLT, just for exactly as you described, because she could basically stay on the same amount of health, but be guaranteed to hit you with the first 4 dice attack, and then probably hit you anyway with 2 dice afterwards, because, again, as you said, she didn't have any defense tokens. This isn't a full list that's on the screen right now, but at the end meta of 1.0, this list was one of the top things that was like, if you couldn't counter this which generally you couldn't, you're gonna lose because it was horrible. You had Sabine Wren, who just applied extra damage from bombs, so your bomblet generators were just dishing out 2 damage a turn.
And don't forget that bombs were done as an action, so it wasn't in the
what is now systems phase. Yeah,
it was literally I can move, slam, advanced sensors, advanced slam, drop a bomb. So I can leap over you, drop a bomb on you, and then with Sabine you can have another damage as well. Bye.
And
happy days.
And bomblet generator was infinite as well. You could just drop bombs and drop bombs and drop bombs and drop bombs. Whereas in 2.0, they've very much nerfed bomblet generator because you have to spend a shield in order to drop a bomb, which means no one uses it. Which I'm perfectly fine with. But Sabine was pretty awful because she could just deal that extra damage. I don't know what else to say about that list. It just dished out stupid amount of damages, and you just couldn't kill Miranda because she just regened every single turn.
Yep.
Absolute badness.
Get it off the screen. Get it off the screen.
Well, we aren't going to fully go off those screens. We're gonna zoom into that. This was one of the last cards that was printed in 1.0, and this one specifically was horrible. It really was, because it's a 4 dice attack, which meant in 1.0 you always basically had double mods. That was one thing in 1.0 towards the end. Everything had double mods. You had like K4 security droid. You did a maneuver and it was like, free target lock, and then I'll do push limit to do my 2 other actions.
It did have to be a blue maneuver with K4, but yeah.
It was just free action economy everywhere.
Yeah.
And so Harpoon missiles was 4 dice, so generally it was going to hit you. And if this attack hits after the attack resolved, so you actually took damage from those 4 dice, you then got assigned the Harpoon Condition. What was the Harpoon Condition? Someone else read it.
When you are hit by an attack, if there is at least 1 uncancelled critical result, each other ship at range 1 suffers 1 damage, then discard this card and receive 1 face down damage. When you are destroyed, each ship at range 1 suffers 1 damage. Action: discard this card, then roll an attack die. On a hit or a crit result, suffer 1 damage.
So no matter what you did, you got hit by this, and then you were just gonna take more damage. No matter what. And back in those days, you didn't have charges, so you'd have to just discard this card to perform this attack. But that condition card was just disgusting. And then if you were actually attempting to fly a swarm, then you were just screwed.
Also, it should be pointed out that in 1.0 there was no limit to the number of upgrades of a particular upgrade you could take if you had the slots.
Yep, so if you had 2 missile slots, you could just take 2 lots of Harpoon missiles.
Yep.
And again, it actually got to the point where the rules lawyer contingent actually decided, and this was verified by FFG eventually, that when you fire with a TLT and after it hits, you turn all of the crits to a hit. I think that's what TLT says. And basically they said,
you mean heavy laser cannon?
No, there was heavy laser cannon, and there was also something on TLT as well, because when you cancel all the results.
Yeah,
and
you
basically
still take the crit in inverted commas.
You still take the crit, even though it was cancelled.
Yeah.
Just get this, internet. Even though the result was cancelled, that still triggered Harpoon, and you still took the damage.
Mm-hmm. So TLT, you fired, and then if it hits, you cancel the results and then just apply a hit. But if any of those uncancelled results was a crit result before TLT takes them away, it triggered Harpooned. So going back to the full list, you had Miranda Doney pinging everyone TLT, you had Captain Nim pinging everyone TLT, you had Sabine Wren doing extra damage from bombs, and then you had Harpoon missiles just triggering stupidly easy because TLT, just the way it was written, you could before TLT cancel the results, if there was any crit result Harpoon goes, yes, that was one uncancelled crit result, so therefore, thing that I am on suffers an extra damage, and everything around me suffers an extra damage.
The first big competition, the first systems open I went to, at the end of day one, I was doing really, really well, and I came up against a guy that had a load of Scum Z95s, and they all had Harpoon missiles. And in one round, I nearly used all of my damage deck.
Yep.
There's 33 cards in there, boys. 33 cards, and my ship had shields.
Yeah,
At that point, I was like, "This is not fun anymore."
You could apply more than one condition card or something as well, couldn't you?
Yeah.
Yes, because the Harpoon card isn't limited.
Yeah. So one ship could have all the Harpoon condition cards, and then as soon as that thing's hit by a crit in inverted commas from a TLT, if you've got
died
or did an action to remove a damage or whatever, it just dealt. If you've got 3 Harpoon condition cards on one ship, everything around it suffered 3 damage when that TLT hit you.
Yep.
That's how stupid it was. I can't not rant about that card. I think I'd basically stopped playing 1.0 at this point. Had 2.0 been announced when this thing came out? I don't think Harpoon.
No, not yet.
It hadn't, and I'm an optimist in general, but that card absolutely almost killed the game for me. It really did. And I actually put up with all the other stuff, and although I didn't like it, I could deal with it. But Harpoon got to the point where it was just like, there is no point even trying now. There is just no point, because regardless of what your initial roll is, with all your mods and your re-rolls and your double mods and all of that, there's nothing I can do to tech against that. All the other lists, yes, they were a nightmare, and you had to bring the counter to the counter to beat it, and you had to buy certain packs to do it. But there was always that you still stood a chance.
Yeah.
When I came up against this, I was like, I just don't stand a chance anymore. There is just no point in even trying. I might as well just,
You got paired against this player in a tournament. It was just like, oh, okay, good game. I'm gonna go get lunch.
Yeah.
That was the feeling, which shouldn't really happen in any kind of game that you want to play. You want. I mean, it's still Star Wars, and it's like you had fun knowing that you were coming to fly ships and go pew pew. But whenever someone put this on the other side of the table, or whatever was the meta at the time, and you don't want to sit at a table and just be like, all right, well, this isn't going to be fun now. You don't want to have that feeling. Whereas you transfer over to 2.0, and again, I'm just going to refer to the app. Everything can balance up and down. You can remove the slots. You can move the points. And FFG's promise is that they're not ever going to do any free action economy ever again. I think you said that to me, didn't you, Mark? You mentioned that to me the other day. They promised they're not going to do anything free ever again, so you're not going to get your K2 security droids or anything like that anymore. Everything in 2.0 is pretty much valid. You've got a fighting chance. Perfect example right now. A meta right now in 2.0 as we speak is Zam and Django, which is another thing as well we didn't mention. There's 7 factions in 2.0 now because it spans the entire film series of Star Wars now. So you've got your Republic and your CIS. So you've got Zam and Django on the CIS, who's meta at the moment. But
Jam and Zango.
But Tom Reed of the Sith Takers, not the Sith Takers. Is he a Sith Taker?
No, he's a Sith Taker. Yeah,
he is a Sith Taker. I don't know why my brain's going. Just because we've been talking about what we're talking about. He at the moment is flying. I'll bring it up on my phone because I saved the list because I thought it was fantastic. Just the biggest pile of jank you have ever seen. And I've actually saved it as jank as well. He's flying the YV666, which no one ever flies. nicknamed the Party Bus in 1.0. He's flying it with Jabba the Hutt, Greedo, false transponder codes. No one uses Jabba the Hutt, apart from in this instance. Then you got Lando Calrissian in the Scum Falcon, who's also got transponder codes, and you've got Sarge Ventress doing her thing with 000 and false transponder codes and a load of other stuff. And
I think the key to this list is the one thing that's on all three ships.
Transponder codes.
The transponder code. And Jabba.
Which basically, if you lock something for the first time in the game, or you get locked for the first time in the game, you basically have to spend the charge that's on false transponder codes and jam the thing that you've locked or the thing that's locked you. And Jabba the Hutt, at the end of the turn, can spend one of his energy to flip up an energy on anything that's friendly. So basically, he gets to reuse the transponder codes and constantly jam you. It's a very dirty list, and I think next points update is probably going to get nerfed a bit when things like Zam Crew gets increased in points. But the fact that it's a YV666, which isn't really played, a Scum Falcon, which isn't really played, and a Sarge Ventress, which is kind of played in the Shadowcaster. Mark, you tend to play it a lot.
Yeah.
But it's stuff that you don't see, and it's Jabba the Hutt sitting in his party bus, relaxing and chilling. And
chilling out, maxing.
Relaxing on Cullen and shooting to me. Never mind. We don't want to get copyrighted. He's just chilling in the YV666. Dishing out jam tokens from every single ship, and Tom is wrecking face with it. He beat me 200 to 88, something like that, 98. So I think I did decently well against him. It was a really fun game. But the fact that he's flying stuff like that is amazing. And yes, in a couple of months' time, he might not be able to. But that's the way 2.0 works. If something becomes an issue, or just how the game is now, points go up and down, stuff might lose some slots, and then you fly something different if you have to after the points update. Whereas in 1.0, you'd never be able to fly anything of that kind of jank, because you'd end up playing against what's on the screen right now and then just be like, my YV666 is going to be dead turn 1, which means Jabba the Hutt's probably dead. Jabba the Hutt I don't think was a thing in 1.0, but you get what I mean.
Nope.
So 2.0 just has this whole balance, and then for new players, they've even got a different format, which is hyperspace, where a certain list of cards won't be available, and that changes every 6 months as well. So the meta of hyperspace changes even more than extended play where everything's available. And when you had to transfer over to 2.0, what FFG did was release what were they called? Conversion kits.
Conversion kits, yeah.
Yeah.
So if you went to the right store, you could pick one of those up for 30 quid.
Yeah.
About that, yeah.
And you basically had the faction with the cards.
Really, really generous. I mean, I've got a big collection of X-wing ships because I've got plastic crack issues. But a lot of people complained, well, I'm not swapping over because it's going to cost me an absolute fortune to do my entire collection and whatever. But one conversion kit pretty much would let you fly most lists.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you're like me and you own 5 K-wings and you feel the need for that to be your first 2.0 list, and you need to buy 2 Rebel conversion kits to do it. But, when you look at other game systems, I mean, I've never played them, but, I know 40k is called that because that's what you have to spend.
Mm-hmm.
And when they change stuff, I don't know how much the codexes and whatever are, but it's far cheaper than swapping over to X-wing. I'm reliably informed.
Well, 40k before the pandemic hit just moved over to 9th edition.
Right.
So it was the 9th if you've been playing from the beginning. it's the 9th time that you've had to buy new codexes, and generally codexes nowadays cost you 30 quid.
Yeah.
Which
But
is,
don't you have to buy more than one?
No.
Well, it depends.
Right.
It depends.
Okay.
I've had to, for 9th, I've got them in front of me now. I've got the rule book, the new 9th edition rule book that cost me 40 quid. I've got the Space Marine Codex that cost me 30 quid. And then I've got the Space Wolf Supplement Codex that cost me 25 quid. So that's nearly 100 quid, basically.
Yeah.
And
So actually,
for me,
swapping
that's the
over-
4th time I've had to do that with new codexes.
Yeah.
So,
But I will say that 4 years is over. That 4 times is over about 12 years.
yes, that 4 times is over about 12 years. X-wing 1.0 died at 5 years old.
Yes.
Yeah, 5-6 years. Yeah.
And 2.0 is now 2.5-ish years old.
It's
Yeah.
2 years, 2 and a bit years.
But AMG, as it's now going to be under, have said that they have absolutely zero thoughts or plans for a X-wing 3.0. You do get people like naysayers saying, there'll be a 3.0 eventually, there's no point investing in 2.0 because they'll just rerun it again. Well, it's been 2.5 years, they've got no plans for it, which means there's going to be at least another 3 years of 2.0. 2.0 is so healthy. It's the biggest and friendliest community that I know. Hence why I run the Ready Room with my friend Mark.
Hello.
Yes. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now if X-wing community was anything like, and I'm not saying anything bad against those communities, but 40k or Magic the Gathering or
Yeah.
Yu-Gi-Oh communities are far, far more toxic on the internet compared to the X-wing community. And I think that's literally because it's Star Wars, and like I can't describe it. It's just such a nice community to be in, and I'd probably say X-wing is probably 3 times as big as it was in 2.0 as it was in 1.0. I don't know about you guys' thoughts on that, but if you've got a spare, probably 20 quid nowadays, and you've still got 1.0 stuff, get an expansion kit and change over to 2.0 because it's just a better time.
And I think it's fair
really
to say,
is.
I 100% agree with what you said about 3.0, and there's all these people going, well, it's just going to be changed again. But as it stands at the minute, they've learned the lessons from 1.0. And are all the cards that they've brought out spot on? No, some of them have gone up horrendously in cost, but they've got the ability to do that now.
Yeah.
So, we've still had the horrendous lists that people, I remember early on, 4 generic Phantoms was the thing because they were cheap enough and they could have Duke, and they just had this system whereby, as a little mini swarm of them, they were just almost unbeatable. But, within 6 months, they've tinkered with the points, they've tinkered with the slots, and yes, you can still run that list, but it's not the indomitable beast that it was.
Yeah, wasn't the Phantom... Sorry, Matt. Wasn't the Phantom one of the first ships to have a slot removed?
Yes.
Or
changed?
Yeah, wasn't it so that they couldn't have Duke?
Yes.
Wrong.
No, they had the gunner slot taken away.
That's right.
No, they had the crew slot taken away and replaced with the gunner slot.
Yeah, with a gunner slot, sorry.
Because Whisper with Darth Vader was silly.
Yes.
So now you've got Whisper with Fifth Brother instead. Which might get errated again, you never know. 2.0 is so flexible just because they can change all that stuff now. Whereas 1.0, the starters, the community is going to be a lot smaller now. I know. I don't. I want to try and not to talk about it, but you sort of have to. There's still people out there that play 1.0, and that's fine. You can carry on playing 1.0 for as long as you want. If you're having fun, have fun. But I don't like it when I see 1.0 players still naysaying about 2.0, and complaining about the price point or whatever you want to point out that they've been complaining about, when it's really not the case. Naysaying about having it changed to 3.0, all that kind of stuff. Don't naysay about anything until you try it. And I highly recommend anyone that's playing 1.0 still to come at least onto Tabletop Simulator and have a go with 2.0. And then if you've got a spare 20 quid, I bet you can find an expansion pack, or at least spend 20 quid and get cards that you need for a list that you want to fly from a shop like, I don't know, ProTech, who sells cards separately, and you'll be able to play 2.0. Even if you're a new player, FFG's recent articles, at the end of each article, they recommended stuff to buy for that faction. So you basically had a core kit for the Rebels and the Ghost, and that is a list, and it's actually a decent list to fly. I think you still fly Kanan Yarrus or Hera in the Ghost, and then Luke Skywalker or Wedge in the X-wing, and that's your 200-point list, and it's cost you 20 quid to move over.
Yeah.
And if we go over the list of horrendous cards that we went over, so just quick rundown. Veteran Instincts, they've said that's not going to happen again. So pilot skill is pilot skill, or initiative as it's called now, and you are what you are. You can't make yourself any better other than with force and whatever. Push the limit. That's built in specifically to the individual ships, so you can't get anything better than you had. TLT doesn't exist, but even if it did, you get range bonuses on cannons now. So even with TLT, you would get an extra defense. Expertise doesn't exist. Engine upgrades only able on the Falcon, and then it turns it to white. Do you know what I mean? A tiny mind link doesn't exist. There are things that are similar, but they're not as good. And even if they were as good, they can still be adapted and changed so that they're not going to be multi-spammed, or they can just price them out of existence, or even just alter the hyperspace rules so you can't fly that ship or that upgrade.
Yeah.
So, with Harpoons, they've learned that, condition cards still exist, and some of them aren't the most fun to get in the world. You can still have a double modded attack on a proton torpedo, and that is still hefty, but we're talking it's 12 points to do that. So you get two of them, so you've got to put the price in, you've got to put the effort in. And I think they have genuinely learned the lesson. They can tinker with the points, they can tinker with the slots, and everything's fixable now.
Yeah.
And then you haven't got that thing where I've got a card that says one thing, but actually it means something else. I think
Go on.
That's it. I just think they've done a super job.
Yeah, 2.0 is ace. Again, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing on the Ready Room and running tournaments with Mark and getting prize support in the middle of pandemic and posting it out to people all over the world. I wouldn't be doing that if it was an issue. I wouldn't be doing that if X-wing 2.0's community wasn't as good as it is. And as Mark was just saying about they've learned the lesson and now they can change stuff. Just last year, even though we were in the middle of pandemic and everyone's playing on the simulator on PC, what are they called? The CIS ship that tractors people.
Nantex.
The Nantex. They became a massive issue. I can't remember what the particular list was. I think it was just the fact that you could fly like 5 of them in Grievous. They were a massive issue, and FFG immediately saw that and just went, right, hammer down, emergency point change. They're all going up in points. Oh no, now I can't fly as many of them, and now they aren't as powerful.
They also did that with the Upsilon Shuttle.
Yes, because so that you can't take 4 of them or whatever it was.
Yeah, the Upsilon Shuttle, but the Nantex thing was really interesting because that was a new ship that they introduced that wasn't in 1.0, and that had some serious issues with it. So I think there were some serious design flaws with it with regards to they had no downside to their ability, so that they could bump and still do their ability to tractor and barrel roll and whatever they do. And there was a online contest where a list of multiple spammed Nantexes were doing whatever they do, but they went, okay, we can deal with this. We're not going to kill the ship. We're not going to make it completely unflyable. But what we are going to do is we're going to put the price up so you can't spam them as much as people have been doing. And then all of a sudden, that list still exists, but it's not dominant anymore because people have moved on because the broken element of it has been taken away.
Yeah.
Anything to add, guys?
No, I think we've pretty much covered everything.
I think we have done. Let's quickly go back through the slideshow. So, if they were to bring certain stuff into 2.0 very quickly, push the limit, they're obviously not bringing back. They turned into linked actions. Veteran instincts, they're obviously not bringing back. Where? So, no, they're not coming back.
Oops. Neither of them are coming back.
Well, we had a quick discussion about this on our private chat group. A tiny mind link isn't. Forget about that. But expertise. So in 2.0, this would be 8 points. What if they brought this back and then you had to take X amount of stress tokens for each focus result you change?
Yeah. Possibly.
So
now it'd be more likely to be a strain token or a strain in a disarm or deplete or whatever it's called.
Yeah. So
I think deplete would be fair.
Yeah. So
because then you can't really do it every turn.
You'd have to do some blues and get rid of deplete tokens. So basically, if you rolled 4 eyeballs and then decided to expertise all 4 of them and gain 4 deplete tokens, you'd probably be screwing yourself.
Either that or have it like Leia, which is charge based. So you've got 3. You build up 3 charges, and you can spend each. You can spend each charge once to change 1 eyeball. So you could do 3 at once, or just try and stretch it out throughout the game. But once you've spent them, it'll take you so many rounds to charge it up again.
I think expertise is one that could potentially come back, but it'd have a serious downside to it. And I could agree with energy, or like if you did the deplete tokens, you might have to think, if you rolled 4 eyeballs, you might have to think, how many of these do I actually want to change to a hit? Take that many strain or deplete tokens, so that I'm not massively screwed for the next couple of turns. Then you might be able to have a bit of thought about it.
Is that, especially with the new release packs, when they've brought out cards like Sienna Ree, where her ability is almost a downside.
Yes. Yeah.
And actually, I think that's an area that they could explore more, because I think we all just think that the pilot ability has to be some amazing bump that you get, rather than a fluffy explanation of the character.
Yeah.
But again, she's priced well enough that yes, there is a downside to her, but she's still an Initiative 6 interceptor, which people want. And I think that there's a lot of interesting space with the abilities, that they don't always have to be phenomenal. It's like Jabba's always been there. It just takes somebody to find a way to make Jabba useful. And that's why I like the game, because there is always that. Do you know what? There's these couple of cards in the corner that nobody ever thinks are any good, and actually somebody, yeah, and that's what I like, and I think there's so much scope for the game going forwards. just to max out on that. There are different game types. There's Aces High. I know AMG are looking at more of a theme-based stuff.
That is something to mention as well. AMG are going to look like they've got a really great plan ahead of how they're going to develop 2.0 with story missions. They've got that Kraken, I can't remember what it's called, the tentacle epic ship coming out, and that is coming with a scenario that I already really want to play, which basically the Kraken epic ship comes with like an AI deck of actions. And I've seen a couple of cards where it can basically like slip into a nebula or something like that on the card, and literally you take it off the board, and then it still draws cards, and basically it attacks your ships that are in play with tentacles appearing out of the nebula, even though you can't see them, and attacking you with them, and you've basically got to find and hunt down the Kraken and stop it, which sounds super fun, and I really want to play it. They're also bringing out what sounds a bit like Heroes of the Aturi cluster, which I believe is still 1.0 card based.
Yes, and isn't an official game.
No, it's not an official game. No, it's someone's made the rule set for that. But AMG look like they're bringing forward their own version of that, and I'll definitely sit down and play that with people to develop a ship and upgrade it if that's how it's going to work. And they are doing more emphasis on epic play. Some of the packs that have been released recently, the Phoenix Cell, Fugitives and Collaborators, and the Sky Strike Squadron packs, they all have epic cards in them. For example, there's like you can go back and see them on our other episodes where we talked about them. They're basically like scum cards where you get hired as a bounty hunter, and then you resolve your contract, then flip the card, and then you might have an extra ability on the side as a reward. All that kind of stuff. They're actually developing Epic at the same time, which never happened in 1.0. You just had the pack that was released, and then if you wanted to play Epic play, then you just had to gather what
I think
you had.
In 1.0, the Epic ships were just there to purchase certain high-powered cards like C-3PO and Emperor Palpatine.
Yeah, they were just there to put some nice juicy non-ship cards.
Yes, that's true. C-3PO only came on
in the Corvette.
Oh my god, yeah, and Palpatine only came in the Raider.
My friend Joe bought 7 Raiders, and he made a profit on every single one of them, breaking them down and selling them off in bits. And he actually paid for most of his collection just by buying a Raider, selling Palpatine off, selling Vader off with the upgrade cards, and then sell the model off. And he actually made a profit on every single one.
So what I'm hearing here, Mark, is your mate's a scalper?
Yeah. But he was a profitable scalper.
He did it
properly.
Continuing on the discussion, though, of what could come into 2.0, auto thrusters is in 2.0, but it's now completely different and is only on certain ships.
And a ship ability.
So the Star Viper has it, and Interceptors
have it. Naboo Starfighter? Is it the Naboo that's got it?
No, the Naboo Starfighter has full throttle or something.
Oh, yeah.
Is it not
throttle.
The what's it? TIE Silencer.
Is it the TIE Silencer?
Yes. I'm pretty sure it's the Silencer that's got auto thrusters. Or it's called auto thrusters anyway.
Yeah.
Something like that. I think it's an FO ship. So that is in the game, but it's completely different. So auto thrusters, as it was in 1.0, is never coming back because it was a silly idea. That could potentially come back, but it'll be, again, a completely different wording.
It'll be watered down.
Yeah. I think we do need a range 3 turret. We do.
Yes, we do. We do need a range 3 turret.
I don't think we necessarily need to shoot twice.
Maybe it could be you shoot in once, but you get to automatically change a dice to something, a hit. I don't know. Maybe it could
or
be like
you get to make the second attack if the first attack misses.
Yeah. Because we've already got cards like that in 2.0, where if you completely miss the first time, is it Bosk? Bosk as a gunner card or a crew card?
Yes, I think so. But you also have things like heroic. Oh no, I have blanked out. I will heroic.
Yeah, heroic for the
essentially
resistance.
what you're doing.
If you roll all blanks, which can never happen in a game, but if you do roll all blanks, you just go heroic and then re-roll them all with great excitement, and then maybe have a better roll. Which started out as 1 point, and now it's 2 points because they determined that it was just a bit too good at 1 point, which is fine.
I think if Twin Laser Turret does come back, it will read something like attack. After you try to perform this attack, you should go home and think about your life. Put the card in the bin.
You need to go home and rethink your life.
Yeah, you do. You don't want to buy death stick.
To perform your second attack, you must rip this card up.
Yeah.
Oh god, we've
Either
just
that, or if it's a twin laser turret, you can roll your defense dice twice for each attack.
Yeah. Nim is only scum in 2.0. It's very rare in 2.0 that you've got cross-faction pilots that you can use both ways.
I don't think there's any.
There's Boba Fett, but in CIS it's young child Boba Fett.
But you see, another good thing about 2.0, it is a different pilot. He has a different tag name.
This Hondo
because if we go back, let's see now. There you go. Darth Vader, Black Leader is his nickname underneath there. So and then the only one really that we've looked at now is Harpoon missiles. That's never coming back. We don't even need to discuss that. Nope. Never, ever. So, yep, I think we basically covered that. So, again,
before we go, we've definitely got to have, if you can bring back one thing from 1.0, this is like the reverse of Room 101. There's one thing you can bring back. What's it going to be?
Oh, that's a question.
Well, I loved flying twin IGs in 1.0 because you could put push the limit on them, which gave them dual actions. In 2.0, you can fit 3 in a list and put practically nothing on them, but they don't even have linked actions. So if I was to suddenly have the IGs be different, I'd have the IGs have some form of linked action. I discussed this with Admin Mark the other day, and Admin Mark mentioned, yes, but then you'd have the boosty evadey one, so you'd have the 3 actions a turn. But that's fine, because you'd just increase the points of the boosty evadey one.
And you'd still get 3 actions attack. Yeah,
but you'd be paying for it. I just feel like they need a linked action somewhere, because they're not. They've got 3 evade dice, 2.0, but they can only take a calculate token, a double calculate token, which just isn't anywhere near as possible. 1.0 players, if you don't know what it is, calculate is changing 1 eyeball instead of all the eyeballs.
Calculates were in 1.0.
Were they?
Yes, right at the very end.
Right at the very end. Who had it? Because Gurry didn't.
I'm going to say I'm not actually sure now. I don't know whether that's true.
No, I think calculates were only 2.0.
No, I think they were introduced in the last packs that came out, which was the Reaper and the U-Wing, because they had the 2.0 stuff in at the same time, didn't they?
Yes, they did. Yeah.
That's probably why they had calculate tokens in there, maybe.
Yes. Yeah, that'd be why I was thinking of it.
But yeah, I think IG should have had some form of linked action in 2.0, and then I think that might have just bumped them up a bit, but otherwise I think they're generally sort of unplayable.
Fair.
But yeah.
What I would say is it's a pretty nice, easy one. Please give me back my dial. Please. Dengar would like a dial that he could actually use.
Yes. Yes. Have the ship the exact same way it is, but have a better dial. They nerf the dial a bit too much.
Well, for me, it's a toss-up between bringing back Tycho, who was my favourite pilot in the game, just because he ignored stress. And, if you had pushed the limit Daredevil Tycho, you could chuck 3 stress on him a turn and he didn't care.
All he had to do was just not dial in reds.
Yeah, and he just had to not dial in a red maneuver. And the thing is, he wasn't overpowered. He wasn't a meta-changing game. He didn't really cause anybody too much grief, but he was great fun to fly because you could just trail around 48 stress tokens. Because
when you're carrying a little tub full of stress tokens.
I think
either him or Tarn Mython. I want Tarn back. I thought Tarn was great, low pilot skill, but every time you shoot him, he gets a target lock on you.
Oh, was he in a T-70? Was that a T-70?
Was he a T-70 or an X-wing? I think he was an X-wing, wasn't he?
One of the other.
Listen. Yeah, it was an X-wing. T-65. But there is one of the T-70 pilots now that does that when you shoot them, they get a target lock.
That's why it pinged to mind. I'm bringing it up on my phone now.
I know, but I don't play Republic, and I want Tarn back. I want my Tarn.
Lieutenant Bastion.
That's it.
After a ship at range 1 to 2 is dealt a damage card, you may acquire a lock on that ship. So different, but similar.
Yeah, but Tarn was great because he was such a low pilot skill. People would only shoot him near the end because they didn't think he was much of a damage. So they were always higher pilot skill than him. So they go, haha, I'm going to shoot you. And then they go, great, I've got a target lock. I'm going to shoot you back with the target lock you've just given me. Nice.
Yeah, I think I remember using him actually in 1.0.
But you could only get him if you bought the GR75 expansion because he was one of those pilots.
Yeah.
Because you got him and Wes Jansen.
Yeah, back in the days when the T-65 had about 20 pilots.
Yeah.
Some of them are getting that way now.
Mm.
Which, to be fair, in 2.0, I think that's great because again they can adjust everything up and down, and you've just got a brilliant amount of choice, and almost everything is probably viable somewhere. But yeah, I think that's basically about it. I think we're probably exhausted, and we've got over our ranting about certain things like that.
So do we need to synchronize our watches for about 8 years' time when we go through this again?
Yes. Probably not as ranty, though. Oh, dear. Well, thank you for joining me, Mark, and not admin Mark. And we will do another episode again in the future.
Yep. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone.